Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, members and guests. This is a regular meeting of the West Shore Photography Club. Of course, it is July the 24th, 2023. We have an image review tonight with our very own Mike Donovan, but before we get to that, a very short business session. There is no meeting next week, July the 31st. Our next regular online meeting will be Monday, August the 7th. Now, I came back from Europe with over 18,000 pictures. I've been having a great time processing them, and I sincerely appreciate the power of the masking tools in Lightroom Classic. So on August the 7th, I'm going to do a session on live image processing where I'm going to show you some of the original RAW files that I took and then the final product and explain briefly how I use the power of those masking tools and the ease with which it can be done to come to a final product. Joe's going to help out with a couple minutes on, Joe, you're going to do the generative fill, is that correct?
It'll just be like almost a commercial preview for, that's all.
Okay,
yes.
And that's in the new beta version of Photoshop. But again, the power is just tremendous with all of these new tools. So that'll be on August the 7th. So let me turn it over to Joe to talk to you about trips, and then we'll get into the image review.
Okay, thanks, Dennis. We had a workshop this past Saturday down at Messiah College. And Elaine, are you online today?
He is.
I am.
Yeah, can you give a brief overview of that session on Saturday? Would you mind?
Sure. I think we had a great time. It was a little bit hot, and I think the consensus was that the light was very, very harsh. So it was challenging, but nonetheless, I think all of us came back with some images that we were quite happy with. And there is so much diversity in that area that you can find a wide variety of things to photograph, anywhere from, the creek scenes and shaded walkways and whatnot. But even in the shaded areas, because of the light, it was a little bit challenging, even if you had a polarizing lens or filter on. But those challenges are fun, and I think we learned from them. And at least on my team, we did. I learned a lot from Mary Fox, who was our ICM, intentional camera movement guru. She tried to teach me, but I think I'm hopeless. But I did give it a try and came back with a few things that are acceptable. Can't speak for the other teams though. But I think overall it was a good trip.
Okay, thank you. On Saturday, August the 5th, we have a session coming up on Studio Lighting 101. This is not a class. This is an introduction to studio lighting at Fine Art Photo in Lemoyne. It'll be at 10 o'clock, and it'll be about an hour session. This actually is a really good follow-on to Valerie Hoffman's session on Flash, and this is studio lighting. This is sort of more to give you an idea of how light patterns can be in terms of the Rembrandt lighting, backlighting, and things like that. So it'll be an hour-long session. You'll get a note on it with the specific directions to the location. And then on Wednesday, August the 9th at 8 o'clock in the evening, we're going to have a night photography workshop. And we're going to follow on to the pattern that Jürgen did for us. It was a paid workshop earlier this year. And we'll be going through Harrisburg, doing what we call urban night photography. And it was really a lot of fun last time we did this. And so we're going to be doing, it'll be about 2 hours to get through this session. It'll be a lot of fun. That's August the 9th, Wednesday. And then on Saturday, August the 19th, we have Mary Fox and Eve Smith, and they're going to take us through a photo walk down in Harrisburg. You want to give us a little update on that, Mary?
Yes. This time we're going to like compartmentalize it. We're going to be going to State Street and like a block each way of State Street, if that makes any sense. And there's a lot of alleys, even within that, from third to second to front. There's a lot of alleys between State and the streets that are run parallel to that. So we're gonna keep it to like more like compacted this time as opposed to going all over the city. And it should prove interesting because the alleys always come up with something kind of cool, you know. You'll have the river, you'll have the churches, you'll have the streets, you'll have the businesses, and you'll have alleys with all kind of stuff in them.
Okay, we're starting out, what, around 9 o'clock? Was that it,
I
Mary?
think it's 9 o'clock. Yeah, we'll
Okay.
be meeting at Mr. Kunkel's bench or something, you know.
Yeah, okay, great. Thank you. We have a sunflower trip coming up. Steve, do you have audio on your device there?
Testing, can you hear me?
We can hear you just fine. Do you want to, I know we don't have a date set, but can you give us a little bit of an idea when that might be?
I think the beginning of September or right about there.
Okay,
Yeah, when we have our meeting next week or whenever, we'll get into more details, but we'll go from there and judge how it's coming. So far,
Okay.
it's growing. It's already, they planted it last week and it's already like a foot tall, so.
okay.
it's
And
good.
what's the name of the place we're looking at, Steve?
Lester Farm down in near down 81.
Okay, Lesher Farms?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, we look forward to getting that update when we come up. And this is way out in terms of timeline, but on October the 14th, we're going to have a club trip to the Bower up in Perry County. And this came from the suggestion of Judy Keim, who is online tonight. And it's an absolutely beautiful place. Judy, would you want to give everybody just a little bit of a thumbnail as to what is at the property?
Oh boy, I wasn't ready for that. But anyway, it's about a half hour, maybe 35 minutes from Camp Hill, I would say. And it's a lovely property that Bill and Jane Alice have developed. They also live there. There are sculptures, some pretty large ones, and also some plantings, some landscaping that they've done. And they do it for free, but you know, I think a donation would be nice if you want to go that route. And they can only have so many people there. I believe you found that out, Joe. And they have a reservation system that you're probably going to use. So it's just a lovely property, and the owners are very helpful and can tell you a lot about it as well.
Okay, good. Yes, we have it reserved for the West Shore Photography Club, just for us for that day. And we can take a maximum of 20, as Judy mentioned. And we have a link to a site for you to reserve. And when we get to the 20 mark, they'll cut it off for us because we expect it'll have a really good turnout because of the fall color that should be kicking in about then. So, and that's what they suggested to us. So you'll see a lot more details on that as it comes up. So thank you, Judy, for that. And thanks for getting our fannies up there to check it out. Really appreciate
Sure.
it. Thank you. Okay. And that's it, Mr. Dennis.
Okay, well, one more thing, Joe. Let me give everybody a little teaser. As most of you know, the club fiscal year ends at the end of August. And for our very first meeting in September, we always try to get somebody kind of special as a kickoff presenter. Well, in Joe's extensive travels around the world, he has become friends with many well-known photographers, and he has arranged for a very special guest for us via Zoom on our kickoff meeting on September the 11th. Joe, let them know who it's going to be.
That's going to be E.M. Plant. And E.M. Plant is a really world-renowned photographer that concentrates on landscapes, and which he can do other things, but he concentrates on landscapes. And his images are absolutely stunning. But the good thing is he can also talk and explain how you get these good images. For instance, he works very heavily with a wide angle lens. And for most of us, for me particularly, that's a very difficult lens to use. He can make magic happen out of that lens. It's just phenomenal. And I photographed with him a number of times. And I think we're going to have a really good time having him speak with us. And he'll take questions and answers, and he's a how-to kind of a guy. So that'll be for our kickoff meeting, Ian Plant. If you look him up online, you'll see his Photomaster site, he calls it, and you can actually see little snippets and previews of some of his presentations.
Very good. Thank you very much, Joe. This is going to be a very special presentation. I've been following Ian Plant for many years. I have several of his books. I've watched many of his videos. And in the classes that I teach, I very frequently recommend his work to my students. So it should be very good. Okay, let's get on with the image review tonight. We have 14 images, and I want to thank Mike Donovan for taking the time to prepare for these. So Mike, I'll turn it over to you. You can share your screen and we'll get right to it. There is no theme, by the way, but Mike's going to review 14 images for us. Looks good, Mike.
For full screen and everyone can hear?
Yes, looks
You can
good.
hear and see. It looks good, Mike.
Okay. All right, let's get started then with the Capitol Fountain, a colorful perspective. I still am using the sheets that the judges made available to them. So if it sounds like I'm mentioning composition in every one and color in every one, it's because I want every review to have the same framework, but not necessarily, of course, the same comments. So for instance, this one says, what did the photographer do well? So I'll talk about that for a moment. It's correctly exposed, for one thing. The lights in the background are hot, but that can't be helped. When you're doing a long shutter speed, which this calls for, light is going to build up on the sensor. That's why sometimes there's even like a glow around lights, because the longer your shutter's open, the more the light builds on the sensor. So that's not a bother to me this time, because that's just how it works. Also, what could you have done better at the time of the capture? One thing I might suggest, and I don't know if you have the room in your crop to do this or not, but as far as at the time of the capture, I would have either zoomed a bit or stepped back a bit to include the bottom of the green layer on the bottom. You can see the bottom of it on the right and on the left, but not in the center. And I think that would give you more of a base to sit on and give some more weight and some more structure. Also, on the very top of the dome, you're kind of cut off there where the Commonwealth statue is. So either cut it off a little lower or include the statue. And I know it's hard because it's up so high, but maybe try a vertical shot. Back up, shoot a vertical with the dome right behind the fountain. Maybe that would work out for you. So my suggestion there is a looser shot. And I say this a lot: shoot loose, then crop however you want. Sometimes there'll be 3 or 4 photographs in one image just by your cropping. In post-processing, I already mentioned, either loosen the crop or maybe tighten the crop. Maybe try removing that bottom strip of green. Can you see my cursor?
Yes.
Maybe remove that bottom strip and have this as your base. Try that, see what you think. One thing I would be careful about is these lights on the edges here. What happens is when a viewer works their way around the image, the eye will catch up on some of this stuff. It'll get caught. So just clone it out or pull your crop in slightly, whatever you prefer. Whatever will work the best for you. But I would definitely get rid of those, just because, as I said before, the values of them are pretty high, meaning their brightness, and the eye wants to go to points of brightness or points of contrast. So maybe get rid of those. I think that would help. One other thing I'm going to mention a little later is I would also get rid of these. They're not helpful to your image really, unless you want somebody to read them. And in which case, again, the lower crop will help to have these be more of a base then. But I would clone those out and see what you think of that idea. It's obviously a color burst. Your exposure's good. And I took a look in here. Your focus is really sharp. So that looks great. The light posts are all looking good. So your focus is good. And that's not easy on a shot like this. You have a nice triangular composition here. And the thing of it is the fountain is what you're after. And that's why I suggested maybe you want to use this as just a background. Because the fountain is, with all these triangles, that's your strong point, at least to me anyway. So maybe a vertical shot. I mentioned getting rid of the signs on the posts. The lighting is good. The use of color, the green and red, and this is not red, it's more of a magenta, but as you know with pigment, red and blue make a purplish or a magentish. So the red and the green tend to make each other really strong. So maybe backing off a little bit on your saturation might help. If you love that color pop, then leave it there. Let's see. Good creativity, maybe desaturate. And that's the thing, is the colors make each other stronger. So give that a shot and see what you think. And I also have somebody I think maybe you want to look at, and that is Corey White, Corrie, Corey White. And click on the part of their website that says Liquid Drop Art. Liquid Drop Art. And that'll give you some ideas as far as water and water movement and that kind of thing. Okay. I don't need to ask who did this.
I
but
guess
I'll
not.
I'll pretend I didn't see it. Who did this one?
Yeah, Mike, that's me, Rod Fraser. Yeah, I thought about not making the crop as tight so you would see that veil of green on the bottom.
Right.
And then I thought about going up further. I wasn't sure which way to go on that, but I see your point. And I can see the point about removing the placards on the posts. I kind of like the color. That's why I had it saturated like that.
Okay, then you go for it. You're the artist, not me.
Yeah, and I hadn't thought about the lights on the sides there. Yeah, I could have gotten rid of those. But thanks for your comments there.
You're welcome. And one thing is, if you decide to drop your crop or pull your crop, now you're going to have another layer rather than part of a layer. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Just an observation, but I think it's very interesting that the color of the streams of light that go up in the air change from blue to like a purple.
Yeah,
when they get into the air. That's really cool.
That is very cool. Did you do that on purpose?
Yeah, actually, I did a sky replacement in Lightroom, and I was playing with the colors, and I actually really liked this one. I did that.
Oh,
So you did do it on purpose.
Yeah, I like the color transition.
okay.
Yeah,
Wasn't sure
very
what
nice.
was causing that. All right. Thanks, Rod.
Okay, number 2 is Stop and Smell the Roses. I like your composition here for sure. It's a, even though this is kind of a part of it, this will be a good example of what I mean by the lighter values come forward, the darker values recede. You can actually see it here, which leaves you with a triangular composition. which is always a nice composition. That really works out well in a lot of ways. But the main thing here is to see that the lighter values come to you and the darker values fall away from you. And you can use that to your advantage as far as depth in your image goes, because these values are even less and they drop back even further. Look at this. And these leaves, they're in the background, even though this one's really not in the background. So good work there. The purple and the yellow are complementary colors. Each will make the other pop. So you can either enjoy it or be a little careful with it. It's kind of like a gauzy look. I'm guessing there may be a filter on it, but we'll find out later. Again, my advice suggestion is to shoot looser and then get tighter. You're a little tight up here at the top because a viewer, they may not know it, but they do work their way around the outside of your frame. And when there's a little bit of tension, which when you're really close but not touching, you know, the Sistine Chapel with God and man reaching fingertips, they are not quite touching. And that represents the faith of things unseen. And it's a definite tension there. So your eye wants to be attracted by tension. So be a little careful about how close you get to the edge of your frame. Same thing down here, just a little bit looser crop and you're good to go. Let's see. A lot of pop there, a good wow factor, especially because of the complementary colors, how they help each other. A nice soft focus, which helps with the texture of the flowers, soft. Again, I went over the triangular. I also like the diagonal, which is a little more lively. So you can see with the repeated shapes here, you have all kinds of compositional tools at work. And even if you don't realize that you do when you take the image, part of that is why you were attracted to it in the first place. We take pictures, we don't know why, but there are reasons there. And there's things at work. The lighting, my notes say smooth and beautiful. It looks as though it was a cloudy, overcast day, or if you set up lighting, you set it up so there's a lack of shadows. And when you photograph flowers on an overcast day, it's like having the world's biggest softbox. So that's a nice day. When you look out, oh, the sun's not out. Perfect for flowers. Again, the complementary colors. When you print this, if you print it, try backing off on the saturation a little bit. See if it gets a little more subtle and a little more soft and a little more dreamy. Give that a try, a little bit of desaturation as well. Okay, and the person I recommend for you is Debbie, D-E-B-I, Shapiro. She does florals. Debbie, D-E-B-I, Shapiro. Okay, who did this one?
That's me, Judy. I was actually in a Jackie Kramer workshop, and Jackie Kramer does artistic floral photography. And this was in Bayfield, Wisconsin. It was a cloudy, overcast day. In fact, it rained a little bit. But I like that because then you don't have that harsh light. So
Right,
it makes it a little
exactly.
bit easier. You don't have to get out the diffuser or whatever.
Yep.
I did use, I put a watercolor effect on it.
Uh-huh.
So that's probably what you're seeing.
Right. That's
yeah.
the softness and the brightness
Yep.
of the yellow.
Yep. And I did shoot a little looser, but it was so busy. This was a huge bush of yellow roses, just beautiful. But yeah, it was pretty busy, and that's why I did that a little bit tighter.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. If that's the case, maybe try a vignette
Okay,
and see what that does. And I
Yeah.
know I've known as a pixel peeper, but I would remove these couple little spots
oh, yeah,
because the eye is pulled to a contrast. So the dark value contrasts with the light value. So I would get rid of these just so that people concentrate on the beauty of your work.
okay, sure.
Okay, so wipe those out and try a vignette and see what you think.
Okay, I just wanted to say one other thing. A part of the beauty of this for me was there were lupines and I don't know what else behind it. And she taught us how to get that effect. So I didn't add that effect that, in the background, that was a part of, that was part of what we learned. So,
Nice,
and I love
very
that.
watercolory.
Right, yep. Thanks, Mike.
Oh, you're welcome. All right. Number 3 is the lighthouse climb. What you did well was your exposure is really on the button. Really, really good. I like your composition with gobs of repeated shapes, with S curves, with the whole works. Nice sharp focus because there's some textures at work here, and actually some reflections, which we'll look at in a minute. One thing that I think I would take a look at is this hot spot right here. Because again, when you have something that is totally different from the whole rest of the shot, people are going to look at it. And because the value is so much hotter, people are going to look at it. So just darken it down or clone it out, whatever you want, and see what you think of that idea. Let's see. The hotspot I mentioned, your composition is really, really good. You've got a huge amount of repetition here. It's called rhythm also. And obviously, the thousands of repeated shapes. I like all these triangular forms that get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. That leads the eye also. A beautiful S curve. I mean, you've got all the compositional things going at it. You have a leading line, you have another leading line, really great composition work. Again, the hot spot I would try to do something with. The lighting is absolutely great. The lighting here looks different from the lighting here. So you're actually in sections, and this is kind of reflective. You've got reflections here. You have some up here. I love this little tiny peak of the bricks. So it gives you a background and a foreground. Like I said, I love the composition, and I love how the lighting is done kind of in sections. It's what's called an analogous color scheme, meaning many of these colors are side by side on the color wheel. So you're using kind of like a orangey red and then an orangey red and the red here. You hop across to the greens here. Great job. As far as creativity goes, there's probably thousands of people that walked up there and did not look up except to see how far they had to go and to stop and get their breath. So good shot all the way around. And I've mentioned this person before, Angie McMonigal. She is renowned for this kind of stuff. Angie McMonigal, M-c, capital M-O-N-I-G-A-L, Angie McMonigal. Okay, who did this one? Try it again, I can't hear you.
Okay, Mary Eileen, we're having trouble hearing you. Could you speak
That's
again,
always a
please?
good step. It's, can you hear me now? I unmuted myself.
Yeah, it's
Nope.
yes.
Yeah,
better.
that helps.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. I also got a note. My internet connection is unstable.
Oh,
I don't
boy.
know. Sometimes I say that about myself, but that's okay. Now, this is mine from Cape May Lighthouse.
Did you make it to the top?
I again am having problems. Yes, yes. Hold on, maybe I have. All right, is that better? Can you hear me
Yes.
better?
Yeah, that's good.
It may help if you stop, if you turn off your camera.
Oh, okay.
So sometimes that takes up bandwidth, which interferes.
Okay. I'll have to remember that. Well, anyway, thank you for the comments and everything. This is, yes, and I made it to the top of the Cape May Lighthouse, yes.
Good.
It was, I hit it very early in the morning before you had a lot of people there. So, thank you.
That's good work. Reflecting on pastries. One thing the photographer did really well here is to find order in chaos. Because anyone who's traveled to Europe, especially in summer, knows that you're not the only person there. So you did really good here to pick out an empty area. You see all the huge crowds in the background and these people walking up here, and here's the guy just waiting, the pastry man. So very impressive there. As far as the shot itself, you had great vision to see it, great vision to find it, and then the wherewithal to make a great exposure. There's nothing out of line here. Now the sky is a bit burned out, but I don't know if that's because we're on a screen now or what the situation is, but we'll address that a little later. One thing that I would do is clean up in here a little bit, because if I notice it, somebody else will notice it. And one of the reasons I mentioned those spots is because when you make a print, you have immortalized your dust spots or your white spots or your dark spots. They're never going to go away unless you do the old lick the paintbrush and dip in the dye and that kind of thing like they used to do. The shot itself is absolutely tremendous. Really nice, sharp focus. The color is great. The balance of it is absolutely awesome. This building balances over to here. This one reflects to here. Each building reflects as it works its way up. And that is absolutely great. The look on his face is fabulous. Absolutely fabulous. Your lighting is smooth and beautiful. It looks like there may be some kind of a little bit of a filter or maybe a little bit of sharpening, but it looks fine. We mentioned before that it's like a huge softbox when it's overcast or cloudy. I like the warmth here as opposed to the coolness here. So that makes, as I said, a contrast is where the eye tends to go. So you're probably spending your time up front here, which is another reason I mentioned maybe getting rid of those. Creativity is absolutely great. I made a note here that the gift of photography is to see things. Hundreds of people walk by this, and you got it. Very, very nice. An eye on the sky. Maybe think about this because you have it cut off, but all in all, great shot. Let's see. I'm recommending a British photographer for you to look at named Martin Parr. P-A-R-R. Martin Parr's work is hilarious. It's absolutely hilarious. And this is absolutely right up his alley. It's really great stuff. Who did this one?
Well, Mike, that's mine, Dennis. So thanks for the
Well,
comments.
it's awesome.
Well, yeah, I wanted to submit something a little different, street scene rather than, many other things. But this was taken in Mainz, Germany, one of the stops on our Viking cruise on the Rhine. and simply walking the street and just happened to notice it. It was captured with my iPhone 14 Pro Max in the ultra wide angle. And the funny part was I put to get that image with the reflection, I put the phone right up against the glass. In doing so, I attracted the attention of the guy that you see in the pastry shop, who was
Yeah.
very curious about what the heck I was doing and seemed very concerned. So
He does look it.
as soon as I took the picture, I turned it around and showed it to him, and he shrugged his shoulders, put his hands up in the air, laughed, and walked away. Now, in Lightroom, I emphasized the guy, brought him out a little bit more for, he was kind of hidden in the reflection. I dehazed that a little bit to bring out some more detail on the warmth there. And I used Photoshop generative fill to take out a person who was in the foreground on the left-hand side who was distracting.
Good.
So Joe's going to talk about generative fill on August the 7th. And I'm going to talk, of course, as I said, about digital dodging and burning to give depth and to your image, depth and contrast.
Hey, great.
Yeah, the sky, yeah, that's a little bit of a concern of mine with a lot of the iPhone photos, that they do tend to blow out a bit. So you have to be careful with the exposure on the skies with your phone cameras.
Yeah. Well, I don't know how it would look, but maybe you want to try to clone this guy over to here.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that'd be a good
I
idea.
mean, at least give it a shot anyway.
Okay. Yeah, because the reflections, almost is always darker than the
Right.
real image.
Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, sure. Norway Archipelago. What the photographer did well, the composition is absolutely beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Oops, sorry. As you may know, horizontal lines promote calmness. They're restful, they're peaceful, much more so than diagonals, which these two diagonals are absolutely perfect as far as a little contrast. And now that you've seen them, how they contrast with everything else, they pop right out. The eye is drawn to contrast, to tension. The composition's great. The use of color is wonderful. The green and red pulling each other out, the orange and blue pulling each other out. Wonderful. It looks like maybe a bit of a glow or an Orton effect, and it's absolutely appropriate for this shot. One thing I have to move myself here. Okay. At Hack, I learned that if you cannot see it from arm's length, it does not exist. So I hesitate to even bring this up, but everything else is so perfect. I would get rid of this little spot here. And the reason I would is because it's round and nothing else is. Even if it's a bird on the water or something real, I would still remove it simply because it looks like it does not belong. Everything else, absolutely perfection. The processing is excellent. Every detail shows. The roof is not blocked out. It's not totally black. There's a little bit of detail everywhere you see darkness. The horizontals, I said, are calm and peaceful, with the diagonal steps breaking that up, because that's where they go in and out of the building. So sure, that should denote some action and motion. Let's see. The lighting is warm. You can see by the sky we're either early in the morning or late at night. It's a little bit pinkish. Maybe that's morning. Let's see. The orange and blue complements. Also one other thing that plays against each other is warm and cool. And you can see actual layers here with the warm and the cool and the warm and the cool. And those play against each other too and create depth in the image. It's a great image. I think I know who did it, and I'm thinking that makes it morning light. Who's the photographer?
This is Joe Farrell. and that is my image. And this is the area of the world where it's the midnight sun. So
Oh.
the sun never sets, but I was up very early in the morning to get that particular shot. And so that's a archipelago, and archipelagos on the Norwegian coast are everywhere. An archipelago is like little islands like this that shoot up. And as you sail up to the Norwegian coast, you see a lot of these little lighthouses because they're very, very dangerous because it's hard to see sometimes if it's foggy, which is very foggy in that area. And so on this particular image, I debated about turning the lights on in the lighthouse. And I did actually. Through Lightroom, you can do that. And there's 2 lighthouses there. But that looked too corny, so I had to turn them off. It didn't make sense. So, but thank you, Mike, for your comments. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. It's beautiful. Is there a touch of the Orton effect on there?
Yes, there is. It was
Okay.
it was extremely sharp, and it just didn't fit the feeling that I wanted.
Yeah. It was a good move. And Joe, I'm going to recommend an actual Norwegian photographer named Christian Højberg, Hoiberg. Christian Højberg.
Okay.
Who's a landscape photographer from Norway, so maybe you'll enjoy some of his stuff.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Great work. Okay, Maui Bliss. What the photographer did well is I like that you used layers. There's 1, there's 2, there's 3, there's 4. The horizon is a 5th, there's 6 there. So you can work your way into the image in the layers. You also captured the appropriate colors of the sunset, the dark orange with a touch of blue, which makes each other pop out. A couple suggestions at the time of the capture. The boat, this is the mainsail, which means the boat is going in this direction. And if you have a looser crop, then I try to give more room to the boat so it's not moving out of your photograph, so that it's over here moving into your photograph. Now, I know, like I said, sometimes you look up, oh my gosh, there's a boat, and you get the shot and so on and so forth. The silhouette is excellent. Maybe you'll want to consider a crop that will do that. That will put the boat sailing into the image rather than out. Also, be careful with your focus. If you were to print this in a large size, it would start getting soft for you. So be careful about the sharp focus. Now, I realize it was late in the day, and when you're hand holding, it's difficult to keep it sharp. I understand that. Maybe if you use software or whatever software you use, try a little sharpening and see if that helps. There's, there's motion blur, there's camera blur, there's all kinds of blurs and all kinds of sharpening to try to make up for that. So take a look. The sunset is beautiful. Again, a sharper focus would be helpful. You have a good balance in your composition between the water and the sky. This is almost the classic 1/3 and 2/3. So good work there. The lighting is the rich, warm, golden hour lighting. Again, the blue and the orange, it's a good use there. My only suggestion is, my 2 suggestions are about the boat leaving the picture, and make sure that you're sharpening with your focus. Okay, and I might suggest Lijah, Lijah, Lijah Hanley. It's a photographer actually from Maui. Lijah, Lijah Hanley. Okay, who did Maui Bliss?
It's Steve Robertson. I thanks for your comments. I wasn't happy with the focus on the water, but I used sharpening and that kind of thing, but I just couldn't get it any better than that. And as far as the boat goes, thanks for that. I didn't realize which way it was going because it was anchored, so I didn't know which way it was going.
Oh, I see. Yeah, yeah.
But
Yeah, this is
yeah, it's
this is the main sail, and this is actually the sail that kind of helps steer, and the spinnaker, I think that is, and it'll, so you can tell when this is coming behind, it's going the other way.
no cool. Okay, well, thanks a lot.
You're very welcome. Room with a view. What the photographer did well was captured the absolute majesty of this area. It's truly beautiful. The sky is absolutely great. It looks like almost the center, but it isn't. You have more water than sky, which makes this important as well. And that's because there's so much going on down here. So you were smart to give more weight to the bottom. Plus, that lifted your horizon line up above the posts, except here. Except here. So what I might suggest you do there is what I'm going to suggest a little later with this. So I'm going to hang on to that for a moment. Let's see. There are some dust spots from your sensor. There's one in here. There's some over here. And again, I know you think I'm being picky, but first of all, the work is so good. You hate for something like that to mess it up. Secondly, if you print, they are immortalized. They are never going away. But this is absolutely great. The orange and the blue look beautiful. Even brown is really, in real life, it's a dark orange is what it is. Very beautiful up against here. Really nice work. The only suggestions I might have are to clean up the dust spots and clone some of this off. And I would clone some of these off so that they don't leave the image. You don't want the viewer to leave the image. You want them to explore the image and sit in this chair and look out over. So clean up the dust spots, a little bit of cloning work here and here, and you've got yourself a fabulous photograph. Well, it's fabulous already. I do like, again, the chair is absolutely perfect. You see a little tension here. That brings your eye to the chair. So nice work. And I would suggest a photographer named David Anderson. David Anderson. And if you go to his website, click on Golden Hour Photography. David Anderson, Golden Hour Photography. Okay, who did the shot?
That would be George Kurzik.
Beautiful.
Well, thank you. I shot this at 5 in in Chincoteague. I do have a further edited version where I did take out all those dust spots
Okay.
and actually took the chair out as well. And I didn't think about cloning those posts, but I'm going to do that next. I like that idea.
Okay. See what you think. See what you think of the idea.
I like that idea. Yeah.
Your reflections are just absolutely great. So I hate for the viewer to leave the room, so to speak.
I shot that as wide as I could, you know,
I bet.
16 millimeter, and I wanted to get lower, but I didn't want to lose the sky either.
Yep, I understand. Do you have a little glow on that, or a little Orton or something?
Say again?
Do you have a little Orton effect or a little glow on this?
No, I do not.
That's beautiful.
Typically, I shoot with a 10x, and this one I probably shot with my 10 stop neutral density because I do
Okay.
have the clouds moving a little bit in the top.
Yeah, so you had a nice long exposure to smooth things out.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
No, thank you.
Zen study number 3. This actually leads into what's now called minimalism, which is a new, I don't know how new it is, but it's a new thing in photography, is minimalism, meaning as simple as you can make it. Now, what the photographer did well here was bring us into minimalism. The background is totally clean, so there will be no distractions away from the main subject. Your focus is great. Your exposure is great, and it's not an easy exposure. With all this lightness, and all this darkness, it's not easy, first of all, for your camera sensor, and it's not easy for you to get your exposure correct. This little tiny shadow here is absolutely beautiful. Let's see. I have here that the contrasts are really wonderful. The corners, the sharp edges, and the curves. The dark and the light. The light and the lighter. This dark section and this white section. The contrasts are absolutely great. You have angles fighting against spheres. You have curves against straight lines. There's absolutely contrast everywhere, and that's why this pops. And it does pop. Your lighting is tremendous. It looks like it's coming from two sides with a light on the back. It looks like you have a little bit of a lighter area right here where there was a light. Using color is not appropriate, not applicable here. Creative. You take a bench, a vase, and you go at it. So I would say your processing is just beautiful. The work is beautiful. The triangulation is beautiful. You even have the triangulation here. Really nice shot. Really nice shot. Who did this one?
Hey, Mike, Dave Marchetto.
Dave, that is tremendous.
Oh, thanks very much, Mike. You, to use your term, when you reviewed a photo of mine about 3 years ago, this was really a platform of all kinds of techniques. And, you know, my use of one light is never enough, and one more light is always a good thing. There's more lights on this than I can count. But I appreciate those thoughts. Thanks so much.
No, you're very welcome. You can tell that the background is lit. It's lit on each side. It's lit probably from the top because it picks up this. Nice work.
Oh, thanks so much. I appreciate it, Mike.
You're welcome. Okay, number 9, coming for to carry you home. Oh, by the way, David, look up George Byrne, B-Y-R-N-E. He also does minimalism. George Byrne, B-Y-R-N-E.
Super. Thanks again, Mike.
Okay. Coming for to carry me home, a wonderful street shot. The choosing of the cyanotype filter is a great choice here. It's a difficult exposure. You did well with the exposure. A couple of suggestions. Again, I'd keep an eye out for these spots. I know they were really there, but they don't serve any purpose for you. And if you get close, you're going to see a little halo, especially with the dark and the light, and if you did some sharpening. So be careful with that. I use software called On One, and it has something called a chisel tool, and it'll pull 3 or 4, or however many I tell it to, pixels off an edge like this to get rid of the halo. So see if there's some way that you can do that, because the shot itself is really good, really, really good. Also, let's see, the technical issues. You're hot right here, but that can't be helped. That's picky, really. And it may have happened when you put the filter on. It might be only on my screen. That's about the only thing exposure-wise. I mean, these are all burned out, but they're white. I mean, what are you going to do? So good stuff there. I like the tension right here. He just barely moved past. I would not have liked it coming out of the top of his head, but the way it is now, pretty good. Now, one thing that this is difficult of a composition is he is right in the center, but the bike is not. You have a lot of room here, smaller room here, so the bike is moving into the image. Like I mentioned with the sailboat in Maui, he's moving into the image. He has more room in the front, but that puts him in the center. So it's a little bit of a struggle as to how to go with the composition. I like it as is. The only other way you could go would be to crop back here, but I like the paper laying there and the raised pizza, which tells me it's probably in New York City. So, so nice. One thing you might notice when I talk about value, and I said about removing these aren't so obvious. And that's because the value here and here is so much brighter than these, you don't really even notice them. So that's what I mean as far as values going background or foreground, going back or going forward. The lighting is tremendous. You did a great job. All of those lights probably had a different color temperature, so you were smart to go with the monochrome look. A bit of a gritty filter on there, I noticed. Perfect for the city. So my suggestions are wipe out those little spots. Maybe see if you can do something with that hot shoulder, but everything else looks great. And I might suggest a photographer named James Mayer, M-A-H-E-R, James Mayer. Who did the image?
Hey, Mike, it's Rich Scar.
That's awesome, Rich.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's even more awesome when you think I had a brand new camera. I just bought a Fujifilm XH2 mirrorless.
Oh, nice.
And I was sitting in an upscale New York restaurant outside. It's called Shake Shack, eating my hamburger.
I know it.
Under an umbrella with a little bit of drizzle, whatever, and they closed the street, but they let some of these guys come down through there. I dashed over and grabbed whatever kind of settings I could do, and then do it. So yeah, thanks. Yeah, I like this picture. Can I ask you a couple of quick questions? Would you? I struggle back and forth about cropping out that Jake's, and also I was looking at the woman in the picture in the background, but I kind of like the urban feel of both of those. They kind of give a setting without. Do you think they distract from
No.
any? Okay.
I think the woman provides a bit of a contrast because she's going the opposite direction.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
she's far enough back and her bag is dark enough that she doesn't jump out to the foreground.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like it. And what were you thinking back here?
Yeah, I was wondering if that was a little bit, but it doesn't feel like it's too distracting.
No, the purpose would be to make the bike have more room in the front. That'd be the only reason to try it.
Yeah.
Because this is kind of cool here with the street food and everything and the steam. And yeah.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
What's on the pavement in the lower left corner?
Over
Behind the
here?
bike. Behind the bike?
Right here?
Yeah.
Newspaper?
Piece of paper.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Urban junk.
Yep.
Yeah, cool.
That's I didn't suggest removing it because I think it adds to the ambiance, so to speak.
All right.
Okay. This one sent me to the computer just before I even looked at the picture. And I learned that this is Newton's second law. Force equals mass times acceleration. And that is what operates this machine, is Newton's second law. So very cool title for sure. The lighting is really good. Really, really good. You have a little bit of a tiny shadow here, and you can see that it's a bit of a bluish touch here and here and here. So the color actually creates a triangle. It also plays against the warm colors here and the cool colors here. So good work with the color. Nice and sharp, nice and crisp. maybe I might suggest a looser crop down here. This one has a bit more room. This one's a little tight. So be a little careful with getting tight to the edge, because it does lead people's eye out of your image and you want them to take the time and look at it. Okay, excellent focus, really, really good. Triangular composition. Very nice. A diagonal line, as I think I mentioned before, denotes activity and action. So it's perfect that these would be on a diagonal. Let's see. I went back and forth on this little spot of red here, and it all depends on the purpose of it. If it's to give you a background, then I can go with that. But if it's because you didn't notice it, then take it out and see what that does. And also be careful down here, especially on a black background or a white background. And they look like they might be spider webs even, but if I can't tell what they are, then they're not helping the image. And the image is strong. The pastels are a real nice counterpoint to the powerful, strong white and the powerful, strong metal. So good work there. So a looser crop, clean up the spots, and I think you'll have something. And how about Peter Majkut? M-A-J-K-U-T. Peter Majkut, M-A-J-K-U-T. And click on the section that says Dark World of Machines. Dark World of Machines. And there's some very cool stuff there. Okay, who did this one?
I did it, Mark Albano.
It's powerful.
This was at the Railroad Museum.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm glad I got you to do some homework.
I know you did.
And you get the specular highlights, you know, the things that you said look like webs were specular highlights, and I was having
Okay.
problems trying to get them down and still leave a little bit of definition in the spokes.
Yes, so that it's not just a black blob.
Yeah, and the red thing in the back, I like your idea of maybe cloning it out.
Well, give it a try and see what you think anyway.
Yeah, I did try it in black and white too, but when I did it in black and white, I lost that bronze color around the bearings.
Yeah,
And I kind of liked that.
I do too. I like it, especially since it plays with the blue.
Yeah. But thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
Okay. The Queen's Cottage. Let's see. Nice rich colors. I was talking with Don Uvik at Messiah that I'm still in the habit of underexposing a third of a stop, because that's what I always did with Kodachrome. That's what everybody did with Kodachrome slide film. And now it's ridiculous because it means nothing, but I'm still set at a third underexposed. This is what Kodachrome used to look like at a third of a stop underexposed. Nice and rich. I like your use of lines and shapes. And I also like how the warm and the cool play against each other. I would suggest, like I've been suggesting a couple times, a looser crop on top. When they get tight like that, it's noticeable. At least after a picky goof like me shows it to you anyway. One thing I would do is get rid of this branch. There's no reason for the eye to want to stop here as it works around. There's a little bit tense, little tension there. Everything else is good around the corners. So I'd clone that and a bit of a looser crop on top. The exposure's good. Oops, the exposure's good. It looks to me, and maybe it's the screen, like it could be a bit sharper. So take a look at that. Your use of negative space here is very good. And as you probably know, negative space, really the easiest thing to define it is it's where nothing else is. And it makes a shape of its own. So that's good. So it looks actually like a bit of a puzzle piece with the sky fitting into the cottages. So good work there. Again, the repeated shapes with the bricks, the window panes, these repeated boards, I'll just call them, the over here as well. It looks like your lighting was smooth and overcast, which you can tell because there's very little or almost no shadows. Use of color, again, the warm and the cool, the orange and the blue, just is a great combination as far as I'm concerned. One thing I would be a little careful about, and I mentioned this before, is if you pull it in tight, you'll see halos. And usually that is a sign of over sharpening. Now, I mentioned before, I have a thing called a chisel tool. Not that I ever over sharpen, of course, but I have used the chisel tool. Okay, maybe I do over sharpen once in a while, and that'll pull that halo off. If you don't have that, it's going to be kind of tough. Maybe you could run a real thin clone line in or something like that. But again, I try to picture these as a large print, and that would show up. So be a little careful about the halos. Let's see. I think that's probably it. It's a good capture for sure. You saw something that really was made of shapes and lines, and that's nice. Look up a photographer named Edwin Smith. Edwin Smith. Okay, who did this one?
Hi, Mike. Steve Shedden. I took it when we were at Versailles a few years ago. I was just fascinated by the layers of the roofs of the cottages there. And I, like you, I actually have my my camera set for 1/3 of a stop darker. For some reason, I just like doing that. So it's always set there, you know, in the daytime. And I do like that. I probably maybe did do a little bit of over sharpening. It makes sense. But for the most part, I really didn't do too much other to it. The camera just caught it real well. And I just thought it was just so interesting that I wanted to get the roof line more than the entire house.
Yes, I don't blame you. It's a good work. And did you think about what all went on inside those cottages?
Not a whole lot, but a lot did, obviously. It's a very nice area to photograph.
Yes. Okay, good.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, the cheese stand. The exposure on the face and the hand is absolutely great. There's no real hot spots here. The hand is just perfect, absolutely perfect. That thing says that she has worked at a cheese stand for a long, long time and made cheese for a long, long time and lived for a long, long time. So good catch there for sure. One thing I debated back and forth, and again, it could be because of the screen, is the boundary or the border between her and the background. If that's something you don't want, then you can close your ears. If you do want a little bit of separation, what I'd suggest is you brighten this, lift the shadows, pull up the shadows until you can see a separation between the two. Then do a selection on her, lighten her just a bit, maybe a half a stop, then deselect, put everything back the way it was, and she should be a little bit lighter, just a touch to separate her. But if you love the fact that she's blended into this background and the hand is way so important and the face, then you stick with what you got. I'm only here to make suggestions. Let's see. I do have a suggestion. I would get rid of this and I would get rid of this. Okay, don't help your image at all. They throw it out of balance. In fact, you could actually crop down a little more if you wanted to give that a try. I would not crop in on this one and ruin this piece of cheese here, but I would clone that out. I would also clone out this, but everything else looks really good. So my suggestions are do some cloning and see if you want to open her up or not. That's completely up to you. The exposure is really good, really good. It's a triangular composition again. Let's see, the top and the left, I would get rid of those. I like the blue and the orange. It gives a nice base for the cheese, and it was kind of her to write it in red. So that really pops. Let's see. So yeah, the cropping, and give it a shot with her outfit, unless you prefer it like this, and that's fine. I want to suggest a photographer named Chris Roche, R-O-C-H-E, Chris Roche. And this appears to be Eastern European to me, and he does a lot of his work in Eastern Europe, a lot of portraits, black and white especially. So take a look at him. Okay, who did this one?
Hey, Mike, Don Uvik.
Hey, Don.
See what your mentoring does for people?
Sorry.
So you were spot on everything you just said. I mean, I did already print this. I printed it darker, and then I looked at it as you were discussing things, and I said, you know, I want that. Maybe I want to try to reprinting it because of the fact that I do want that separation, but it does look really, really cool if you make it almost undiscernible between her and the background. I mean, yeah, as I'm looking on my frame here, on my screen here, I can see the differentiation, but the actual printed image, I have it blended. She kind of disappears into it. So, but you know, I want to reprint that and see what happens.
Great.
And when I did, I haven't matted it yet, but the mat actually removes. I needed to have some additional space, but the mat removes the top and the left-hand side.
Oh,
so,
okay, good.
So yeah, you were spot on with a lot of those comments. And this was done in Gordonville. You guys had the mud sail, and that was my very first mud sail, and happened to spend a lot of time watching the cheese stand apart from every place else. And actually it ended up that this was the only image where I got all the pieces to fit together, because I had quite a few shots, but she was in motion. There was a lot of things going on, and but I totally agree with your comments, and I am going to try to bring her out a little bit and reprint it and see what I get.
Yeah, see how it works.
Yep.
The hand and the face are absolutely great.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. Ethereal. Don, did I give you a photographer? Yes, I did. Okay.
Yeah.
Ethereal. One thing you did well is you had an idea and you made it happen. You committed to the style that you wanted to present. It's a clean image. This would be an absolute disaster with dust spots, but it isn't. You have a really nice diagonal line there. Some people, there's a bit of a hassle about it should have come out of the corner, not out of the corner, blah, blah, blah. I like it not coming out of the corner, because then it I don't know, it looks like it's not stuck into the edge of the frame. You might want to try a tighter crop on the left. See what you think of that idea. That there's a big area of white, and that's balanced by not an area of white. So maybe pull it in just a bit, see what you think, and that'll balance the image more. It'll pull more attention to the actual flower itself. That's really my main suggestion. The focus is sharp. You would think it isn't because of the ethereal look of the image, but the focus is sharp. It's a great diagonal line. I like the flowing lines of the leaves. And again, we're looking at a green and red complementary color scheme. Very, very nice. And even though they're both faded, you can see they give each other strength. So good work there. It's a light, fresh lighting. I don't know if it was overexposed, I'm guessing in camera or in software rather than overexposing it by light, but I'll find that out soon enough. Very creative. You made a flower into something beautiful. It's a dogwood, I believe, and it really turned into something sweet. Very, very nice. Try the crop on the left, see what you think of that. But everything else I think looks really good. And thank you for looking around and cleaning it up. Okay, who did the shot?
Mike, that was me, Mary Fox. That is a pink dogwood tree, and it was in my yard, and I took it and I wanted it to look lighter, so I overexposed it in post-processing.
Good.
And it's funny you should bring, I never even thought to crop the left off, but I do make cards from time to time, and I did make a square card and I did crop that part off. So I have it both ways, this way and in the square version. And thank you for your input. I really, really like it. And no spots, Mike. I was always
I
worried
know,
about
it's
that.
awesome.
I always think of spots, but I think of them more when I know you.
Well, like I said, once it's printed, they're immortalized. They're not going away.
Thanks, Mike.
Mary, you might want to look up Sue Bishop.
Okay.
She does floral photography as well. Sue Bishop.
Okay, got it. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. And our last one of the day is, I hope I say hellebore. I hope I say it correctly. I'm going to find that out soon enough. The choice of black and white is fabulous here. Absolutely fabulous. The composition is tremendous. It's hard to beat a triangular composition. Very, very nice. The details and the sharpness are absolutely great, which pulls out the water specks, which provides a wonderful follow-up to these and a contrast to these. So great stuff there. As I said, it's sharp. The exposure is really good, like the triangular composition. The lighting, which is brighter here, you can see a shadow here. So the light, I think, was probably coming from right down here, and it's throwing shadows back here, but it's softer and more gentle out here, and even more so down here. This is a perfect example of lighter values approaching and darker values receding. Perfect example. Let's see. I don't really have much to suggest about this, actually. It's a great job and it's beautiful. Who did this one?
Thanks, Mike. It's Elaine Shook. This one was a bit of a challenge for me. It is a hellebore, by the way, you pronounced it correctly.
Oh, what do you know?
And this particular variety is a very early blooming one. So it was late February, early March, and
Wow.
because we had such a horrible spring that just wasn't really cooperating, we ended up having some early foliage come out, and then later on we had a frost, and so the foliage around it outside in its natural environment just looked awful. So I cut it and I brought it in and was playing with the lighting. I had it staged on a piece of black acrylic to get the reflection, and had to make a makeshift box to eliminate some undesirable reflections on the acrylic. But it's a combination of lighting. I had some side lighting from a bay window. I had this on my kitchen table, actually. So there was some soft lighting coming from the side, but I was also using, it was coming from the right. I was also using a little LED flashlight. And so I had it set up in a tripod and I had to shoot with a cable so that I could move around with this flashlight, experimenting in order to get that reflection positioned just right, to get that that triangular look.
Yeah.
And to get the lighting correct.
Oh my gosh.
I think I probably took about 100 shots of this, the reflection and the angles and the lighting just right. It's also a 15 image focus stacked image.
Wow.
So that's how I was able to get it so sharp. That's about it. It was fun. It was a challenge, and I really was kind of happy with it.
I hope you wrote down your final setup so you don't have to go through it all again.
I never do. I'm too lazy.
Fair enough. Look up a photographer named Louis, Louis, Dallara, Dallara. He also does black and white florals.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And that is the end of that. This gets harder and harder and harder, and it's all because of you people.
They keep getting better and better. Well,
I know.
thanks to all the photographers who submitted images tonight. And thanks very much, Mike, for your comments. They were very informative and entertaining. Anybody have any questions or comments for Mike or any of the members who submitted images? Give you a minute to unmute yourself. Just speak up if you have a comment or a question.
Dennis, somebody asked if I could send out a list of the recommended photographers. If I send that to you, can you get that out as like to all the members?
Absolutely. I'll include it with the follow-up email tomorrow morning if you can, as soon as you can get it to me.
Okay.
Very good. Anyone, questions or comments? Okay, guys.
Well, just to Mike and
yes,
you know,
David?
his eye and his approach is always welcome. I certainly appreciate it. And Mike, I look forward to when you're going to review. So
thank you very much.
I really learn a lot from you. You know, I really want to comment on that. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much. It's hard to tell when you're doing it by Zoom how it's going. Like in real life, you can tell if people laugh or not. Here, you can't.
Right. You're exactly right, Mike. That is a challenge with Zoom meetings.
Yeah, it was very good, Mike, except your shirt is a little bit distracting.
Well, it's baseball season. I decided to go with the theme of the baseball. The Hawaii Islanders minor league team.
Thanks, Mike. That was a
You're
great
welcome.
session.
Okay,
Really
guys, as we normally
Thanks,
do,
Mike.
would you please unmute yourself? And let's give Mike a big round of applause.
Here, 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 here.
Thank
Well
you.
done, Mike.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Mike. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Beautiful
Thanks,
images.
Yeah, they were awesome.
Okay, guys, thanks for attending the meeting tonight. Have a good evening. See you next time.
Yeah.
Good night.
Night.